Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. CJ English here with Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue, and welcome to Ladies Night. I've got badass Brenda here helping me every other Wednesday, and I've got Bella as well. And so I'm reading from Rescue Matters, the story of how Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue came to be, and ultimately how we all went on to save thousands of dogs and are still here today. So last 2 weeks ago, we left off with chapter 5. Invisible Dogs, and we left off with Bear's story. Tonight we start off with Bubba's story, and Bubba was one of the dogs that it was in the resident pack with Bella, and Bella lived with Bubba for not too terribly long, but they were buds. I remember when Bella came to me that I knew she wasn't with Bubba for very long, and they were sad. They were friends. We're sure of it. But for those of you who watch regularly, Keith and Scott have Grandpa now. And to me, Grandpa is sort of the new Bubba. And when I was up at the rescue not too long ago, I was looking down at the floor, which is epoxy, sort of in the walkway, right in front of the kennels. And there was dog prints, and I laughed because, of course, if anyone's going to have, dog prints in the paint or dog prints in the epoxy, it's going to be these guys, And I was like, oh, look at those dogs. That's really funny. And Keith says to me, well, you know who that is, right? And I said, no. And he said, those are Bubba's paw prints. And I just sort of stood there silently looking fondly over Bubba's memory, and just thought it was really cool that they left his paw prints there, and it's sort of outlined now and forever there. I took a photo of it. But I'm going to start tonight with Bubba's story, and I'm going to try and hold because it's not like I lived with Bubba. I mean, obviously this was Keith's dog, but I met Bubba, several times, and his story, I think, is just one of so many. Just really illustrates what goes on across a lot of communities in the United States and across the world. So tonight we start with Bubba's story, and any questions that you have, just pop them up along the way. If I don't happen to catch them, Brenda's going to write them down and pass them to me, so I will answer anything live, and then I'll catch in the comments later tonight if I don't get it right away. Bubba's story. Keith had been working as a deputy sheriff for a year when he heard about Bubba. A former officer stopped Keith on the street and said he couldn't believe Bubba had survived as many winters as he had. Bubba lived at the end of a 10-foot chain in a broken doghouse surrounded by a yard filled with plywood and junk. Although he did get let in once in a while, Bubba was gravely malnourished and had a severe case of mange. More than half of his hair was gone. He had multiple skin infections, and once again, winter was coming. Not long after I met Keith, I had the opportunity to meet Bubba. Like a proud dad would boast about his children, Keith told me all about Bubba. He warned me that Bubba was still in rough shape, even though it had been a while since his rescue. He said that the years of being outside in the cold, at times starving, had eaten away at his body. And then he told me what it took to save Bubba. Keith Benning, quote, "An older guy that used to be a cop stopped to talk to me. He brought up Bubba and said someone should take him away from his owner. He couldn't believe Bubba had made it through as many winters as he did alive. He told me about a time when it was 40 below and the wind was howling. The only thing Bubba had to keep warm were some thin blankets inside of a doghouse. The guy said that he stopped in front of the house and saw Bubba shivering. Quote, "I never saw a living thing so cold in my life," the guy said. He called the police. They came out and told the owner that he needed to put some straw in the house or bring Bubba inside. The guy threw another blanket out, but that was it. He called the police again a few hours later, and Bubba's owners brought Bubba inside for the night. But he was back out there again the next day. I told him I would go over and take a look at Bubba. Bubba lived across from a school next to a pile of plywood, but he was always curled up in his doghouse. When I started out there as a deputy, I didn't know he was there, even though I drove past the house 10 times a day. When I got to the house, Bubba came out barking and growling. I noticed he was skinny and moved slowly due to arthritis. I was able to give him a dog treat, but wasn't able to get close to his doghouse. I thought about it, and in most states it would be neglect, but not in North Dakota. I had been a deputy for a year at this point and had only won one neglect case. I knocked on the door, but nobody answered. I called the state's attorney and told him the situation and sent him the pictures. He said I would have to wait until it got colder and Bubba got thinner or had an injury or a condition that needed vet care. I drove by every day and felt like shit now that I knew he was there and he needed help. I ran it all through my head. I knew he was hungry, but if I fed him, it would make the case harder. If I went to the door and talked to the people and told them they needed to take better care of him, they might, but I knew he had to get away from them. If I did that, then what if it's winter and they throw him outside while I'm off on my day off and he freezes and dies? So I drove past every single day and tried not to look at the house or him. I let him suffer until he was suffering enough that I knew that I could win the case and get him out of there. I would think about him at home, at work, every time I drove by. For a while, I tried to avoid that block. I would turn before it or do a loop around it and keep patrolling. Then I stopped seeing him for a while. They started taking him inside more, and I would just see the chain leading out to that pit that he made that was his doghouse. November rolled around, and I started watching my weather app every day. What was the temp? What was the wind? Was it going to stay cold for a few days? Finally, in mid-November, it got cold and windy with freezing rain and snow. This was enough, I thought. I walked into the yard and saw the black shape in the doghouse. "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" He started to snarl and bark and try to charge out of his doghouse. And he made it out the door and fell over, struggling to get up. He looked like a zombie. 40% of his fur was gone, and he was nothing but skin and bones. He stumbled forward, and I held out a treat. And he woofed it down and looked for more. I had waited too long. Why in the hell did I do that? Why didn't I go sooner? His body condition and mange was so bad, I was sure I could have stepped in much sooner and won the case. I felt like shit. I felt lower than shit. I was a horrible person for letting this happen. I went to my car and got him a full bowl of food and a gallon jug of water. One good meal and a drink would do nothing to make his outward condition better, but I had to keep him going at this point. From the looks of him, he only had a week or two left. I took pictures of everything. I got in my car, drove off, and sent everything to the state's attorney. He said we had more than enough for a case, but we would have to get a judge to sign off on the warrant and seize him. I told him to call whatever judge he could because it was supposed to get cold and I didn't know if he would make it. Then I waited. Time was in slow motion that day, and every time I called to check, there was still nothing. The state's attorney had emails out to every judge in the area, but one had lost a parent, another was out of town, and things had gone nowhere. 4 o'clock rolled around and still nothing. It was a Friday, and I was just mad. I was mad at the state laws, mad at the owner, and mostly mad at myself. Do I put a blanket down? Does that make them know something is still up and lock him away in the house? Still nothing at 4:30, so I called again, but the state's attorney was gone. His assistant said no word from the judges. Sit and wait some more. Sit and let him suffer some more. Saturday and Sunday crawled, and I did nothing. He had to make it just 2 more days. He had to. I waited until dark and I snuck up and gave him food and water. Monday came around and the judge issued a warrant. I flew to the house and saw that he wasn't outside. Had he died? Was I too late? I called the state's attorney and asked if I could go to the door for the warrant. He read it again and said no. The warrant said it was for the dog on the chain outside the house. Going to the door wouldn't work. Monday crept by, then Tuesday, then Wednesday, and Thursday was my day off, so I let deputies know to call me if they saw him outside. And all I could think about was this dog and how I had failed him. I thought he was dead, and that his last days were spent suffering because I made the wrong call. I was taking care of other dogs in the garage when my phone rang. It was a fellow deputy that called. Bubba's outside. He's alive, but in bad shape. And so I raced to the house, got dressed, grabbed the warrant, and flew down there. I couldn't technically use my red and blues and siren, but I did. If another cop saw me, I would just say I was looking for someone that had sped past. I would make something up. I backed it down from 100 to 10 miles an hour through town. I got to the house and the other deputy was waiting outside. The owner was waiting outside as well when I pulled up. I asked him his name and he told me. I asked him if Bubba was his dog and he said yes. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest for animal neglect. Why? He asked. Look at that dog. What do you mean, why? He looked back, honestly confused. He's got cancer. I couldn't afford the vet bill, and the dog catcher wouldn't come on state land to put him down, and I just couldn't do it. It's not cancer, I told him. It's mange, and it doesn't explain why you can see every bone in his body. I was pissed. I told the other deputy to take him in and that I would be taking Bubba to the vet. Bubba was able to walk, stumble to my car. He didn't want to get in and he growled when I tried to pick him up. He didn't have the energy to fight or bite, so I put him in the car and drove him to the vet. I brought him in and the people in the waiting room all stared. This poor, pitiful creature. I explained to the vet that it was a neglect case. I'm glad you got him, she said. He was treated for mange and bacterial skin infections. When I got him home, I took tons of pictures from every possible angle and light to get the best ones I could. I submitted everything to the guy. I submitted everything and the guy pleaded guilty. I could now find Bubba a home. I thought he needed to go somewhere down south. I would get him healthy and send him off. I took him in to get groomed, and the person did it for free and gave him a bandana to wear. After a few follow-up visits to the vet and a lot of food and water, he was doing better. In the spring, I would take him for walks in the woods, and he loved it. He loved being free and able to walk where he wanted to. I learned how far we could walk and that he was heavy to carry back if we went too far. He had settled in. Breakfast was now at 9 a.m. or so, and dinner was always at 6 p.m. At 5:50, he would start barking and hobbling around in a circle. At 10 past 6, he would keep circling and come stare in my face. It was time for dinner, damn it. I looked into homes down south, but how could I be sure they would spoil him to death? Things are getting harder for him. Harder to get up, harder to walk, harder to hear. If I'm not at home at 6 for a feeding, he pees on the bottle of pee cleaner or something of mine. The thing is, he's still happy. He still wags his tail. He can still get up. I'm going to spoil him until that tail isn't wagging anymore. End quote. Thank you, Keith, for writing that. he wrote, you know, quite a bit that I asked him to, and I sort of cleaned it up a little bit and made just a few minor edits. But you know, those are Keith's words, which obviously he's the only one that can tell Bubba's story. Bubba's story is why rescue matters, and why advocating for tighter animal cruelty and neglect laws matters. Without tougher laws, dogs like Bubba suffer for years, and no one can do anything to stop it. I'm going to take a little time out, and cheers, ladies, and if there are any gentlemen out there, maybe our friend from the North Pole typically joins us on Wednesday nights. So cheers, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Can we see a picture of Bubba? Yes, you know, I've got a picture of Bubba here. I think it's sort of backwards and probably not very good. There's a couple of other full color photos of Bubba in the Kindle version of Rescue Matters. There's a full color photo gallery in the back that I wasn't able to include in the paperback. And Bubba was a Rottweiler. A Rottweiler mix. And some of you guys are losing the signal. I'm sorry. I don't know. Is it a lot?
Not a lot. Just every once in a while.
Okay. Hey, North Pole. Hey, glad you're tuning in. It's sort of ladies' night, right? It doesn't have to be. How long did Keith have Bubba? I'm not sure about the exact time frame. I'm gonna say that he had him for at least a couple of years. And as I get further along in Rescue Matters, Bubba comes up a few times. And then if you stay with me long enough through the weeks here, you know, I'm sure that I'll be a nice, good slobbering mess when Bubba is no longer with us, which was just super sad. I had no idea that it was going to happen in the time span that I was writing the book, and was just devastating for everybody. And if you scroll back in time through the Turtle Mountain website, you'll see some of the videos that Keith took of Bubba, and in his last couple of weeks and in his last day. So Bubba's definitely, you know, on our Facebook, in our Facebook videos, if you're willing enough to scroll back. And I don't have any tissues, so I'm gonna sort of do this with my Real Men Rescue Dogs shirt here. All right, here we go. Chapter 6, The Deputy's Dogs. Keith looks like the type of guy that could lift a pickup truck off a trapped civilian. Keith's a man's man with a sturdy build and a thick beard that you'd think would translate into more hair on his head, but you'd be wrong. If Keith walked toward me in a parking lot late at night, I'd consider emptying my can of pepper spray. Given his intimidating stature and beard that could frighten a baby, it's a miracle any dog or puppy trusts him at all. But they do. His external look doesn't fit the mold of a traditional caregiver, but the gentle pats on the head, the soothing baths over infected skin, and his reassuring voice turns them all into tail-wagging, face-licking puppies in no time. I like that chapter. I saw someone, sorry, I got something on my face here. It's dog hair, probably from my shirt. I saw someone repost that chapter, or that paragraph, that description of Keith in something recently, and said that it just fit him so well, and it does. It's, yeah, that's him. Before his stint as a prison guard, Keith spent his early years working in the roughest parts of Southside Chicago, repossessing cars in the projects. Keith Benning, quote, "I've been picked up, slammed on the hood of the car, and thrown on the curb. I've been accidentally kicked and then heeled on the back of my neck with my face on the pavement. I was racially profiled because I was white and around the projects at 2 a.m. That was why I would get pulled over. I got beat up because of asking questions like, why did I get pulled over? Don't you need my consent to search? What about my Fourth Amendment rights? I learned after a few times to stop asking those questions and just let them do what they wanted." End quote. I gotta stop for 1 second and have a little. I think Bubba's story got my juices flowing. How you doing, Brenda?
Well, a little teary-eyed.
You doing okay?
Mm-hmm.
Bella doesn't like the camera. She's sleeping over there. I was surprised to learn that Keith's early encounters with law enforcement weren't amicable, and that he'd been at the wrong end of a fist more than once from the very officers sworn to protect him. Now, decades later, Keith is the epitome of an officer you'd want protecting your community. I asked Keith about his parents. What he told me was as shocking as it was tragic. So, I know this isn't about animals per se, but this is about the guy that is the reason why we're all here. So just like when we talked about the prison stuff that he did, I felt like it was important to get a sense of who he is. Keith Benning, quote, "I had just turned 18 when my dad died of a heart attack. My mom wasn't strong enough to deal with reality. She started drinking. My mom drank herself to death 4 long and troublesome years later. I was going to join the Marines before she died, but I stayed back to care for her. I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. After that, I repoed cars and got into some real sketchy situations." End quote. Sketchy situations that Keith played out for me like a movie on the big screen. Fast-paced, action-packed with guns and stolen cars and a big payout if you make it back alive with one of those repossessed vehicles. Because he worked for years in the most underserved neighborhoods, Keith experienced what it felt like to be in the minority. He learned firsthand about the real-life struggles. Everything he'd experienced in his life made his compassion and deep level of kindness toward every living being make sense. He doesn't look like the type of guy who'd been talked to by the chief about picking up puppies and putting him in the back of his patrol car, but that's exactly the type of guy he is. Keith was on duty when the message came through the Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue Facebook page. "If you don't pick up this puppy, I'll have to call the dog catcher. It wandered into my yard and I can't keep it. I have too many I can't feed already." Still on duty, but with no action in the hills that day, Keith decided to sneak over and pick up the unwanted puppy before the dog catcher would have no choice. The plan was to quickly drop off the puppy at home before any duty calls came in. Keith set the scared husky pup with icy blue eyes on the back seat of his patrol car. Between them was a plexiglass smeared with muddy paws and snotty nose prints, making it apparent to anyone who'd been back there that this vehicle had carried more dogs than criminals. Keith Benning, quote, "All I could think about was, please don't let me get a call. Please don't let me get a call." End quote. But a call came in. A vehicle pursuit. Keith ran to the trunk of his car, pulled out a blanket and his duffel bag. He propped them up around the scared pup so he wouldn't get tossed around in the chase. He sped off to meet up with the other officers who were in full pursuit. When he got there, a car was in the ditch and a driver was being apprehended. It was Keith's turn to take the guy in. Another deputy walked the man in handcuffs over to Keith's car for the exchange. "He can't come with me," Keith was forced to admit. "I don't have room. I've got a puppy in the back." Because few humans on earth can resist the appeal of a puppy, criminals included. Keith and the 2 men strolled to the back of the window and looked in on the fluffy passenger who'd just been on a high-speed ride. From underneath the blanket, a little black and white head popped out, and 2 blue eyes stared up at the curious men peering in. A curled tail began to wag. Keith looked at the other men, shrugged his shoulders, and said, "Had to take him. Lady was going to call the dog catcher." On a coffee break, on a different occasion, at the local gas station, the girls behind the counter told Keith they had seen a big brown dog running along the side of Highway 5. and everyone knew if no one picked him up, he'd eventually get hit. Keith took his coffee to go and drove along the blustery highway until he spotted the brown bear-like dog that was running along the gravel shoulder. Keith stopped his patrol car, got out and threw some treats. Hesitantly, brown bear dog ate them up. When Keith tried to inch closer, he would run and run, trotting along the scared along the side of the highway with cars racing by. Keith jumped back in his car and followed. He stopped, tried the same technique again and again, and the same thing happened. For 30 minutes, the cycle of stop, eat, run went on. The cold wind continued to blow across the highway in gusts, and the cars never stopped rushing by. There was no way this dog was going to let Keith touch him or leash him, let alone put him in the back of his car. Keith knelt down and gave every last ounce of patience he had to this deathly scared soul who was furry and big, but underneath was clearly emaciated. Brown Bear had been on his own for a while, weeks at least. He was starving, and the only hope Keith had to get him in his car was if there were no loud noises, no sudden interruptions, and to just keep appealing to this big boy's appetite, which worked well enough for a while until it didn't. Keith Benning, quote, "So I'm trying to get close enough to slip a leash around his neck, but he's really scared. And the cars are all going by, and I'm thinking, please don't get a call. Please don't get a call. There would have been nothing I could have done for him. I'd have had to go. He would have either been hit by a car or run off in the woods and starve or freeze to death. I had to do what I had to do. I had to get him in." You see, this is rescue in the trenches. There isn't always time to gain their trust. There isn't always time to let them come to you. There's just not time. And if you want to save them, sometimes it's not pretty. And sometimes it traumatizes them. And I hate doing it. Hate it. But the alternative is worse. I've heard Keith talk about this many times where he hates it. I mean, he hates having to, grab him in whatever way and sort of make a rescue happen when there's just not time for any more patients. There's just no more hours for whatever reason. And a little later on in the book, I talk about, a couple of times where Brenda and I were out on some of these rescues, and hours and hours and hours went by, and I was new to the game. I had no idea how in the hell they were going to get these dogs to get in these kennels with these little tiny pieces of cut up hot dogs, and they're standing on top of the snowbank barking at us for the last 45 minutes. They're not going to come anywhere near us. And the alternative is you don't keep trying or figure out how to get them. Like, they're toast. They're not going to make it through the winter. It's just so incredibly difficult. I've heard him talk about this particular situation and been in that particular situation. You've been in that particular situation way more times, than I have. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Brenda. When I got close enough and he was distracted with treats, I knew I had to grab him. I didn't want to, but it was the only way. I figured I'd get bit. He was so scared. In a perfect world, one would have ample time to let that dog trust you, to put a lead around him, to gently coax him with treats. But there wasn't time for that. Inevitably, a call would come in and I would have to go. The moment I grabbed the fur on the back of his neck, his mouth shot forward and he sunk his teeth into my inner thigh. Half-inch from my, not kidding, half-inch. But I had to hold on. I grabbed all 60 pounds of dog by the waist and scruff on the back of his neck, and I picked him up. He let go of my thigh, and I managed to get the car door open and get him inside. After I dropped him off, I had calls, so I went on them with blood soaking through my pants until later when I was able to tape a paper towel on my leg. End quote. Which is kind of comical now that he's got all these injuries. He's sort of hacking himself to pieces. Just one little, one little piece of flesh at a time on his own now. And the dogs are getting their little bites too. That dog became known as Chance. He was extremely malnourished and had been severely abused. He wanted nothing to do with humans. Uttering a one-syllable word would cause him so much stress that he trembled and peed at Keith's feet. On the same day Keith was tracking down Chance and trying to gain his trust, I was 4 hours south, sitting in my living room. Feet kicked up, with a glass of wine, after dinner, as I often do. True story. On a bad writing night, I switch over to Facebook and get sucked in like a vacuum has just swallowed me whole and trapped me inside, because that's what writers do. Get frustrated, go down a rabbit hole, and that's exactly what happened on this night. A video came across my news feed and caught my attention. It was a brown bear-like dog, body full of winter fur, but obviously in bad condition. He hung his head so low, his nose almost touched the ground. His mannerisms and tail showed how defeated his spirit was. Then a man's voice came across. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." It was a kind, persistent voice that eventually brought Brown Bear in close enough for a little tiny pet on the head. I don't think I'd ever seen a dog so scared. Yet still, there was a tiny movement of his tail and flicker in his eye as he accepted a crumb of kindness. My heart bled for this broken soul. I'd never heard of Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue or Keith Benning, or even about the behemoth problem that existed just a few hours away from me. I didn't know that in just a few months' time, I'd be meeting the kind voice who showed Brown Bear such compassion. Nor could I have imagined that in just a few years, I'd be part of an organization that would change the lives of thousands of dogs, or that I would take on one very special case of my own and never let her go. And that is the end of chapter 6. I'm going to read you the rest. I've got Chance's story here. But that video that I saw of Keith and Chance, that big brown bear, in my mind, I had to go back when it was the first time I possibly came across this organization. And that was the night. Probably like a lot of you, when you saw Eve for the first time and sort of stumbled on Turtle Mountain, or saw Marge for the first time, or Betty, or the ones before, or maybe some of the ones after. We all sort of have our moment that, you know, Keith or Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue caught our attention, and that was mine. This was in 2015, this was in 2015. And that's a long time ago. I mean, these were desperate times. In chapter 7 is when I introduce Aaliyah, who has been with Turtle Mountain and Keith since very early on. And then Trista comes in as well. Well, Trista actually before Aaliyah. And back then, there weren't the yous out there now that were supporting us, and Aaliyah and Trista and Keith and his wife at the time. It was just a one dude in a garage, just barely surviving. And that's the first video that I remember was him taking Chance in. And there's a link to that video. I put it on a bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/Chance the Brown Bear. And all of the links are listed in the book, and all the live links that are still available are in the Kindle version, so that when you read the book, you can go back and click the video links and watch the stories unfold as they unfolded, 5 years ago. So here's the remainder. Chance's story. Chance was resilient. It was only a short time before he was jumping and playing with other dogs and learning to trust people. when the video of Chance was posted on TMAR's Facebook page, a friend of Keith's who lived in Colorado reached out. Chance hitched a ride to Colorado and now lives where life is good and green. I reached out to his family, Bill and Gina at the G&G Ranch, to see how Chance is doing today. This is one of my favorite parts about writing the book. I got to reach out to the families who have those dogs now and really see where they are and what they're doing and get the photos and hear the family story and be like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm doing, here's what it's for. I would love to include your dog and their story and where they are now. And I just love that. It's so inspirational. And that's why we do what we do, right? So here's what they had to say. Quote, he's extremely happy and well-adjusted and not chewing up the house anymore. His nickname is Chewy. We named him Charlie, a.k.a. Charles Barkley, because he's a bit loud at times too. He turned out to be such a great dog. Tell Keith again, thanks for the strange way it all worked out. And that is Chance's story. Okay, everybody. In 2 weeks, I've got chapter 7, which is when I introduce Aaliyah, who is still with the rescue today and has been with Keith and Turtle Mountain since almost the very beginning. And I don't think she likes to be on camera very much, but if we encourage her now, maybe we'll get her to read her own chapter. And then it can be a true ladies' night, and you can see some of the other ladies behind Turtle Mountain Animal Rescue, which I think would be great. So, Aaliyah, I'm going to be calling you. Brenda said she would drive up to your house in Grand Forks and assist you that evening. I think you should read your chapter. So that's coming up in 2 weeks on Wednesday at 7. We're going to see if we can get her to do that. Why isn't the rescue open to the public? What a great question. So the rescue, quote, is Keith's house. And the rescue is still Keith's house and Keith's garage. One reason would be because, like a lot of rescues struggle with, if the location is known, it would be a dumping ground for animals. And we don't have a shelter with open kennels and a lot of availability. We've got waiting lists for cats, waiting lists for dogs that come in. We have to triage and prioritize. It isn't just an open, here you go, free for all, hey, I heard they can take it. This is the dude's house. So until we get a shelter, access to the public any time of the day and night is not possible. But Keith is very gracious with his time and has hosted many people on request and by appointment to see what it's all about. So you could definitely request that. Is there another book in the writing? Absolutely. After I finished with Rescue Matters and it came out, I said I would never in a million years write another rescue book again. That was it. I'm done. There's no way. I can't believe I finished it. I'm so done with it. I just, oh my God. I just cried for the last 18 months and, not a lot of things went as planned in rolling it out, in publishing it. And it was a stressor for a while, and so I was like, there's no way, it's never gonna happen. And as the months went on, I said to Keith not too long ago, I said, hey, I got a really bad idea, and I don't think you're gonna like it. It's a really bad idea, but I sort of can't get it out of my mind now. I think maybe we should do, another rescue book. And I've got some ideas on how to make that happen and what to include. And then there was sort of a silence between us. And he said, no, I think that's a great idea. And so I'm working on it. I've got a website where you can sign up to be notified of any new releases. I don't send junk. I don't send spam. I don't send fluff or hellos. I only send out if there happens to be a sale on Amazon, if Amazon discounts the books, or if I've got a new book, I'll send you an email. So you can sign up for that. The link is posted. Don't have time to read. Totally get it. You can go back through on YouTube and listen to all the chapters up to where we are so far. And my intention is to read the full book. So anyone will be able to listen to it for free. This is not about money. This isn't about me selling books. This is about getting our story out there. Personally, it's about me having a vessel to get our story out there and be able to give money back, to be able to donate a portion of the profits back to the rescue and have that be ongoing. And I think, you know, as you're reading along, you read it, you follow us, and man, we can all do some good together. And that was my dream of what I wanted it to be like and happen. Hey Brenda, when did you get into the rescue? Was it in North Dakota? Best Friends was first?
Yep.
Yeah, Brenda got into rescue through Best Friends in Colorado, which now... In Utah, yeah. Yeah. In 2011, she wrote down for me. And Brenda's story is to come, and we're going to get Brenda to share a little bit more about that. And me and Brenda have been up to Best Friends many times. She actually has been up to the rescue to Keith's garage more times than I have. She goes up there regularly and does a ton of transports. She just transported roach. You're going up there again, what, this
Saturday?
weekend? On Saturday to do more? How many times have you been out to Best Friends?
18.
18 times to the largest animal sanctuary in the world. And I got to sign books at that largest animal sanctuary in the world this year. And that was pretty freaking sweet and really cool. And you'll never guess who my connection was that made that happen. Who had been there 18 times. So, you know, as an author, you don't really put that on your bucket list. Hey, I'd like to sign books at the largest animal sanctuary in the world, because, like, who makes that happen? It was just one of those things that was incredibly humbling and super cool and just fell into place. And Brenda is a huge part of that and a huge reason for that. Like I said, she's a badass rescuer, and I can't wait to share her chapter with you coming up. When will the new building be completed? You know, they were out doing soil samples. And I would be absolutely a lunatic to give you a date or even a rough timeline, because things change so incredibly quickly. And I do know that we're sort of piecemealing it one step at a time together. And so as soon as humanly possible, I want to get out of Keith's garage and into an actual shelter and have a long-term solution for the people in that area. Merchandise and shirts, and then I'm going to let you guys go. Hat is on the website. We've got 2 Real Men Rescue shirts. We got the Real Men Rescue Dogs, and we got the Real Men Rescue Animals. They don't come in girls' sizes, so I'm wearing my husband's. But, you know, every time we travel, or used to travel in the airports and such, everyone would comment on these shirts, and I loved it, so I wanted to wear that tonight. This one is back for a limited time on the website, and all of our other merchandise, Wear It Proud, huge portion goes back directly to the rescue. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. If not me, it will be Aaliyah, because her chapter is coming up next, so I would love for her to share that with you directly from the mouths of that babe. And then we'll see you again. Thank you so much for following and for all of your support. Love you guys. Bye.